All right, welcome in everyone to our deep dive today. We are going to be taking a look at hiring contract specialists. Uh, you're out there trying to bring in the best people, and we found some pretty interesting insights from a company called Teslafy. They're a skills assessment platform, and they had an article out in February of 2025 that we're going to be taking a look at.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons that Teslafy's insights are always so interesting is that they're not just kind of coming up with these ideas in a vacuum. They're working with companies all over, and they're seeing how these trends are actually playing out in real time through all the assessments they provide.
Yeah, so they're on the front line seeing what's happening. And one of the things they highlighted right off the bat was that the demand for contract specialists is on what they called a significant upward trajectory. When I first read that, I was like, okay, not really a surprise.
Hmm.
But then I started thinking, what does that actually mean for someone who's trying to hire in this market?
Well, it's a candidate's market, right? If
Ah,
you've got more and more companies out there that need skilled contract specialists to handle all these complex deals, partnerships, outsourcing arrangements, all that stuff, it means competition for the best people is fierce. So if you want to stand out as an employer, you've really got to know what to look for.
and that's where Teslafy's focus on skills-based assessments comes in, right?
Yeah.
They're basically saying that in this kind of market, the old way of doing things, just relying on resumes, it's just not going to cut it anymore.
Yeah, anyone can throw negotiation skills on a resume. But how do you really know if someone can handle a tough negotiation with a vendor who's pushing back on key clauses? Skills-based assessments can give you a much clearer picture of what a candidate can actually do.
So Teslafy recommends focusing on a few key areas. Some of them are pretty obvious, like knowledge of contract law and regulations. But then there are some others that maybe are a little more surprising, like focusing on negotiation and communication skills.
Yeah, because it's not enough to just know the law inside and out. A great contract specialist, they also need to be able to explain these sometimes very complex legal concepts in a way that everyone understands. They got to build strong relationships. They got to find those win-win solutions, even when things get a little, tense in a negotiation.
And get this, Teslafy also recommends assessing software proficiency. I'll admit that one kind of surprised me at
Oh,
first.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it makes sense, though, when you think about it. I mean, contract management these days, it's almost entirely digital, right? There's software platforms for everything, for drafting, reviewing, tracking, managing compliance. Someone who's comfortable with all those tools, they can be so much more efficient and effective.
Okay, so we're talking about somebody who's not just a legal expert, but they're also a skilled communicator and tech savvy. That's quite a combination to find.
It is. But you know what's interesting? Teslafy actually offers these pre-built assessments for some of the most popular contract management software out there. So that could be a huge time saver for companies who are looking to hire.
So we've talked about the what skills to look for, but what about the how? How does Teslafy recommend actually assessing these skills during the hiring process?
Well, they provide a whole arsenal of targeted interview questions. And these are designed to go way beyond those generic surface level questions that everyone asks. They're trying to really get down to the nitty gritty and reveal what a candidate is truly capable of.
Okay, so let's dive into some of those questions. Teslafy breaks them down into three categories: general questions, behavioral questions, and personality-focused questions. I'm curious about those general questions to start. Can you give us an example of one that you think is particularly insightful?
Well, one that stands out to me is how do you stay updated on changes in laws, regulations, and industry best practices related to contract management?
Okay, I like that one. Seems simple enough on the surface, but what is it really getting at?
Well, it's more than just knowing the latest rules. It's about seeing if a candidate is really committed to staying current in a field that is constantly changing. I mean, think about it. Laws change, new technologies are always emerging, best practices shift over time. You want someone who's proactive about their own learning and development, someone who's genuinely interested in staying at the top of their game.
Okay, I see why that one's so important.
Yeah.
What about another general question that maybe gets at that tech savviness that we were talking about?
Oh, this one's pretty good. Can you discuss your experience with contract management software or tools? Which ones have you used?
Yeah, that seems like a pretty direct way to kind of gauge their comfort level with technology.
Yeah.
But I imagine the way they answer that question is just as important as like the specific tools that they mention.
Oh, for sure. For sure. You're listening for how they articulate their experience. Do they just like rattle off a bunch of software names? Or can they actually talk about how they've used those tools to solve real problems, improve their efficiency, stuff like that? Can they talk about like the pros and cons of different systems? That kind of deeper understanding, that's what really sets a truly tech-savvy candidate apart.
All right, that makes sense. Okay, so let's move on to those behavioral questions.
Hmm.
Now, these are all about trying to get a glimpse into how a candidate has handled real-life situations in the past. What's an example of a behavioral question that you think is really revealing?
Hmm, I like this one. Tell me about a time when you had to negotiate contract terms with a challenging or demanding client.
Yeah, that's a classic for a reason, right? I mean, every contract specialist is going to face those tough negotiations at some point.
Exactly, exactly. And this question, it can tell you so much about a candidate. Their diplomacy, their ability to think on their feet, how resilient they are under pressure, all that. You want to hear specific examples of how they approached the situation, how they communicated, and ultimately, did they find a solution that worked for everybody involved?
So it's not just about whether they reached an agreement, it's how they got there. What about a question that tries to get at their ability to, like, spot potential problems before they become huge issues?
Ooh, yeah, good one. Teslafy recommends asking, can you share an example of a time when you identified a contract risk or issue before it became a significant problem?
Okay, yeah, that's a great way to see how proactive they are. And how good are they at, mitigating risk?
Exactly, exactly. You don't want somebody who's just reacting to problems all the time, right? You want somebody who's actually thinking ahead, trying to anticipate those potential issues. A strong candidate, they'll be able to walk you through a specific situation where they were really paying attention to detail using your knowledge of contract law, and they actually prevented like a major headache from happening down the road.
Okay, I like that one. Last but not least, let's talk about those personality-focused questions. These seem like they're designed to kind of get a sense of a candidate's work style and how well they might fit into a team.
Right, right. One that Teslafy suggests is, how do you handle pressure and tight deadlines in your work?
Yeah, I can see why that would be important in a fast-paced field like this.
Absolutely. Contracts often involve deadlines. Things can change really quickly. You need somebody who can stay calm, organized, focused, even when the pressure's on.
So what kind of answer are you hoping to hear when you ask that question?
Well, I'm listening for their coping mechanisms. What are their strategies for managing their time and their workload? Do they have systems in place to stay organized? Can they prioritize effectively? A good answer is going to show you that they can deliver high quality work even when things get a little hectic.
And what about a question that gets at their ability to adapt to change? Because let's be honest, in the world of contracts, things rarely go exactly according to plan.
Oh, absolutely. Here's a good one for that. Describe a time when you had to adapt to unexpected changes in a project or contract. How did you handle it?
Oh, I like that one. It's all about flexibility and resilience.
Exactly, exactly. I mean, unexpected issues, deadlines changing, new regulations popping up. These are all things that contract specialists have to deal with all the time. You want someone who can roll with the punches, adjust their approach, and find solutions even when things don't go as expected.
So we've covered a lot of ground here, talking about the skills that are needed for a contract specialist role these days and how to assess those skills through these, targeted interview questions. But reading this Teslafy article actually got me thinking about something that goes beyond just the hiring process.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What's that?
Well, reading about this, emphasis on skills and how the demands of this role are evolving, it kind of struck me that the whole definition of what it means to be a successful contract specialist, it's changing. It's not just about knowing the law anymore.
That's a really good point. I mean, we've talked about communication, negotiation, tech savviness, all that. But there's also this huge element of continuous learning, right? The legal landscape is constantly evolving. Technology is changing so fast. The ideal contract specialist, they need to be adaptable. They need to be committed to staying ahead of the curve.
It's like they need to have this growth mindset, this willingness to embrace new challenges and learn new things, which actually brings us back to one of those general interview questions we were talking about earlier. How do you stay updated on changes in laws, regulations, and industry best practices? that question, it's not just relevant during the hiring process. It's relevant throughout their entire career.
Oh, absolutely. And it's something that you, as a potential employer, can really foster, right? You can provide opportunities for professional development, encourage them to go to conferences, create a culture of continuous learning within your team.
That's a good point. Investing in your team's growth, it's not just about keeping their skills sharp. It's also about showing them that you value their development. You want them to succeed.
Exactly. It's about creating that win-win situation. You get a team that's equipped to handle all the complexities of, modern contract management, and your contract specialists, they get the opportunity to grow their skills and advance their careers.
So it seems like the takeaway here is that hiring a contract specialist these days, it's about more than just filling a position, isn't it?
Yeah, it's about finding someone who can really be a true strategic partner.
Someone who can not only help you navigate those legal complexities of contracts,
Hmm.
but also like the demands of the business world as it's constantly changing.
And someone who can help you build and maintain those relationships. I mean, those are so important, with your clients, vendors, partners, all that.
And that actually makes me think about something else Testify mentioned in the article. They talked about the importance of cultural fit.
Oh, yeah. That's one of those things that I think gets overlooked sometimes, but it's absolutely crucial. I mean, skills and experience are essential, don't get me wrong. But if you bring somebody in and their personality, their work style, it just clashes with your team's dynamics, well, that can create all sorts of problems down the road.
So how do you assess for cultural fit during the hiring process? Is it just like a gut feeling kind of thing?
Well, intuition definitely plays a role, but you can also be a little more intentional about it. Think about your team, like what are their values? How do they communicate? What's the overall work environment like? And then during the interview, ask questions that can help you get a sense of the candidate's personality, how do they approach their work, all that stuff.
Okay, so like what? Give me an example.
Okay, well, you could ask something like, describe the work environment where you thrive best. Or, tell me about a time when you had to collaborate with a team on a challenging project. What was your role and how did you approach the collaboration?
Okay, yeah, I like those. They're getting it not just their skills, but also their like preferred ways of working and how they interact with others.
Exactly. And don't forget, too, the interview is a two-way street. Just as you're evaluating the candidate, they're also evaluating you and your company.
Oh, that's easy to forget when you're in that hiring mindset and you're so focused on finding the perfect candidate.
Right. But especially in a field like contract management where there's so much demand, top talent, they're going to have options, right? So they're looking for a company that values their expertise, that provides opportunities for growth, that has a culture where they feel like they can really do their best work.
So it's not just about what they can bring to your table. It's about what you can offer them.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. It's about finding that mutual fit, that win-win scenario, where both sides are actually excited about the opportunity.
Which actually brings me to a thought I had that I think kind of sums up what we've been talking about today.
Okay, I'm all ears.
We spent all this time talking about, what companies should look for in a contract specialist. But what about the flip side of that? What should candidates be thinking about when they're interviewing for these roles?
Oh, that's a fantastic question.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about the skills, the experience, the cultural fit, all the things that employers are looking for. But if you're a candidate, you also need to be prepared to showcase your strengths and
Hmm.
experiences and do it effectively.
Absolutely. So it's not just about answering the questions, it's about using those questions as opportunities to tell your story, to demonstrate your value, to really paint a picture of how you've successfully navigated the world of contract
So
management.
you got to go beyond just like rattling off bullet points from your resume.
Exactly. Think about those behavioral questions that we talked about. Those are your chance to shine. You can share those real life examples of how you've handled tough negotiations, how you've mitigated risks, how you've adapted to change.
It's about bringing your experiences to life.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, whether you're hiring or being hired, it's all about connecting with another human being, understanding their motivations and finding that common ground, where your skills, your experience, your personality, it all aligns to create a successful partnership.
Well said. As we wrap up this deep dive, here's a final thought for everyone out there to ponder. If you were the one in the hot seat interviewing for this contract specialist role, what story from your experience would you be most eager to share? What accomplishment are you most proud of? What challenge did you overcome that really showcases your skills and your resilience? We'll leave you those questions to consider as you navigate this crazy world of contract management. Thanks for joining us.